I was a kid, I wanted to be just like Barbie. I was obsessed with the way that she could be anyone she wanted to be just by changing her clothes. The magic of her and that whole idea gave me confidence, and it made me want to take on the world just like she did. But as I got older, my body changed, just like every woman probably in this room has experienced. And my relationship to fashion became frustrating and a little bit confusing. It's pretty easy to see why. I don't look like Barbie. Ultimately, as I got older, I had a harder and harder time trying to find clothes that made me feel on the outside the way that I felt on the inside. And over time, that frustration grew into clothes becoming kind of my enemy. I carried that with me through most of my childhood and adulthood until last year when I was given an opportunity. Through some social media contacts, I got the opportunity to pick up a side hustle as a fit model for some local clothing brands in Nashville. And if you don't know what a fit model is, it's basically where people with certain body measurements come into a warehouse or design studio for fashion professionals and try on clothes and see how they work with real moving, living bodies. So I went into this experience obviously with some heavy baggage about my own body, and I was almost apologetic to these professionals about what I was presenting to them, and I felt in a way like I was making their jobs hard. But through a lot of grace and patience on their part, I actually, through this experience, kickstarted a journey of body positivity that is pretty basic and simple, and it's so important and it's such a big deal to me that I want to share it with you all and hopefully let you take away some of your own ideas from what I went through. Let me give you a little bit of background about just the fashion industry in general before I get into my story. First of all, you may or may not know what a dress form is. I'm going to show you a picture of one. This is actually 3 dress forms. A dress form is basically a 3D representation of the human body. It's made out of fabric and padding, and fashion professionals use it to pin clothes or tailor clothes, things like that. The 3 dress forms in this image are sizes 6, 12, and 18. And as you look at this image, I know it might be hard to see for some of you, but you can tell a difference in the size of the dress forms. But ultimately, the shape of them is the exact same across the entire range of sizes pictured here. For the most part, weight is evenly distributed across each of the bodies, and curviness is very, very minimal. But the truth is, bodies aren't uniform like this. If you look around in your life or ask any woman sitting in this room, we all have very specific parts of our bodies that we struggle with, that we struggle to fit clothes onto. None of us have this exact same uniform shape. Let me show you what I mean by that in a little bit different form. So last year, I was finishing a graduate program, and I did a survey of 300 women who obviously shop for clothes, and I asked them about their experience shopping and finding clothes that fit them, and I specifically asked for what size they wear and what their bust, waist, and hip measurement is. This image here is a representation of 3 real women who wear the exact same clothing size. So looking at this, it almost seems like these are 3 different sizes for sure. But when you think about how these 3 women fit into the same size with very different body shapes, it kind of makes you understand the struggle that we all deal with as women existing in these very unique and different bodies. Most of us don't look like the dress form, and I personally spent a lot of my childhood and adult life trying to fit into that dress form shape. But the truth is, as much as I wanted to be Barbie, I am not Barbie. I specifically remember a time when I was pregnant with my daughter and I was at the doctor, and he was talking about how my wide hips might make child labor a lot easier for me, and I was incredibly offended. And when I picked my jaw up off the floor, after I had my daughter, he was right. Labor and delivery was easy for me, and maybe it was because of my hips. Either way, take that, Barbie. But speaking of Barbie, Barbie was introduced to the world in 1959. At the time, the smallest available commercial clothing size for women was a size 8. Obviously, that's not the same today, and clothing sizes have changed a lot since then. Let me show you a representation of how they have changed. These gray dots are the 1959 sizes, and the yellow dots are today's sizes. You can see here that a size 8 in 1959, it was about 23.5 inches at the waist. That is smaller than today's size 00. So if I wanted to dress up as Barbie for Halloween this year and go out and find a vintage mid-century wiggle dress to wear, if I wore a size 4, which I don't, I would have to look for a vintage size 16 to fit my frame. If I wear a size 12 or larger, vintage clothes probably aren't an option for me. And as that continuum of changes has taken place, what if I wanted to dress as 80s Barbie or Y2K Barbie? Who knows what size I would wear? So going back to my experience as a fit model, as I sat in that room of professionals, actually stood in front of them, week after week, and they gave me such grace to just give me information about my body as they fit clothes on it, it became clear to me more and more that my body isn't a failure. My body isn't hard for them to fit. They were used to it. They were doing it week after week. Ultimately, it made me realize that just by getting to know my body became something that I could be proud of, something that had done incredible things in my lifetime. One of those being growing an entire human. So as I learned that lesson, I really started to think Barbie would probably be super proud of my body and not ashamed of it. And that's something that I was able to carry away from that experience, and I want you guys to be able to do the same thing. One of my favorite stylists and the former host of What Not to Wear on TLC, Stacey London, she recently posted on TikTok that to get to know your personal style, you have to know what you're working with. You have to have a place to start. She said that the best thing you can do is understand where your body is larger, where your body is smaller, and what shapes work best for you. And I love her message because she always approaches that from a standpoint that it doesn't matter if your body is larger or smaller. It doesn't matter where your body is larger or smaller. That does not define your worth. And getting to know those places about you and those things about you, all it does is just give you information to make better decisions. So back to my survey of those 300 women, only 27% of them, when I asked them, actually knew their bust, waist, and hip measurement. And that, I think, is very sad when it comes to just knowing ourselves and knowing what we're working with. I remember being a kid and my mom loving to shop in the JCPenney catalog. And I would always flip through, and in the middle of the catalog, there was a how to measure size chart, right? It was an outline of a woman, kind of cartoony, with some dashes around her body, showing you where to measure your body. I never really understood that diagram, so I created a new one. And I want to use this platform and this time to share some information with the women in this room, whether or not you know your body measurements, and men too. I'm approaching this from the lens of women's clothing, but it's good to know your bodies. So let me show you how to measure if you're a woman. Basically, one of the biggest, I think, misnomers about our bust measurement is that it's related to our bra band size. The truth is, your bust measurement, when it comes to clothing, goes around the widest part of your chest. So that includes your band and your cup, and goes over the apex of your bust. The waist measurement is the smallest part of your torso, but if you like to wear your pants higher, measure higher. If you like to wear them lower, measure lower. And your hip measurement is the widest part of your lower torso. I think as women, sometimes we're ashamed of our bellies or our butts, but getting to know those measurements and really incorporating that into the way that you want your clothing to fit is very important when it comes to just being familiar with your body and what you're working with. The other thing that I want to leave with this audience today is that it's so important for us to share our experiences. And when it comes to making informed decisions for ourselves and for each other, the best thing we can do is talk about the things that we go through. I think it's very important if we find a local tailor that we love or a local seamstress, talk to your friends and neighbors about them. If you have some social media accounts that you follow that do great try-on videos of clothing of different sizes, share those too. I recently joined an online sewing group. I don't know how to sew, or I minimally know how to sew, but there is a group of women out there who are just making videos to show other women how to hem a pair of pants or to add a dart to a dress. And that has been crucial for me to learn how to make the clothes that I have work with the body that I have. I want to leave you with a quote by one of my favorite Instagram poets. Her name is Nayara Wahid, and she recently wrote, "And I said to my body softly, I want to be your friend. It took a long breath and replied, I've been waiting my whole life for this." Every time I read that, I want to cry. I think that's the universal experience, right? We don't love our bodies in the way that we should, and I think that we can and we should. Be friends with each other and be friends with your own body, because clothes are not the enemy. Thank you.